Hey, what's happening, y'all? Matt here, and back for another of the cover demo series I've been working on. So I got the vocals recorded, and we're gonna get to take a look at that. I did capture a little bit of stuff here and there as I was working through the process, things about comping and just kind of how I have my mic set up and all that sort of stuff. So, before we continue on with the discussion and listening back to what I recorded, we'll take a little bit of a trip to the past to, man, I don't even remember when it was. It was at least a couple weeks ago because I've been dealing with sick kid, and it was like he was sick, then he had a birthday, then he was sick again. So my opportunities to actually work in here in the studio have been limited. But I did eventually get it done. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and kind of take a look at the footage I got during the process, and then we will come back to dive into the session and see what's there. Okay, and so while I'm doing this, I just thought that maybe I should film kind of what the setup is. So for tracking these vocals, I've got my WA87 and my Slate ML1. The Slate ML1 is going straight down into my first Scarlett there. The WA87 is going all the way over here to the first channel in my Behringer 1273, which I've got an EQ dialed in, and the insert turned on, which the insert is going over to my Behringer 369 compressor. So I'm recording with some EQ and some compression. That is going into input 3 on the Scarlett, which is then, of course, going into the computer and coming up here in the DAW. So that's kind of the setup that we've got. We're kind of in the middle of the vocal tracking process at this point, but I'm working on comping together the vocals, so I thought I'd go ahead and show what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So I did one take of the lead vocal, and I've already comped it through. So if I switch to, dang it, if I switch to playlist view, okay, and we see all the different takes. I did 4 solid takes for the lead vocal, and then I did a couple extra on the last set of verse and chorus because after I started comping, I decided that I needed to do a little bit better on that. So got all that done, comped it together, and now I'm working on the second layer of lead vocal. So I'll at least do 2 layers of a lead vocal, and you can see I did 3 takes pretty much. And what I'm doing here is I'm going through and I'm listening. Search, yeah, seek and destroy. Okay, and then I'll hit this. Search, yeah, seek and destroy. Search, yeah, seek and destroy. Search, yeah, seek and destroy. And for the first layer, I'm listening for things of like, my pitch. Is my pitch correct? Is my timing good? Which one sounds tonally the best? And I might, make some compromises. If my pitch is great, but my timing's a little off, and the tone is just okay, versus another one where, okay, my timing's great, but my pitch is a little off, and my timbre kind of sucks. You just kind of have to pick what's going to work best. If I've got and I'm going phrase by phrase, I try not to like chop into words, but I will comp phrases. And the most important thing for me is going to be the tone. If my pitch is a little bit off and my timing's a little bit off, but the tone is really there, that's going to carry over much better than if my pitches and timing are bang on, but my tone is lackluster. So it's all, and it just kind of varies phrase by phrase. So that's what I do at the first layer of lead vocal. Then when it comes to the second layer of lead vocal, basically what I'm looking for is what's going to line up most with what I comp together for the first layer, because I want that second layer to add some depth, but I don't want it to be too terribly obvious that there's two layers. There's going to be a little bit of that. There's going to be a little bit of pitch difference, even with really good singers. When you're dealing with people like me who can get by, it's going to be much more pronounced. So, like in this instance, on this phrase, actually that first take is what I think kind of fits the best. Now, in audio school, what they taught us to do was, you record your takes, and then either you either create a new playlist for each take you're going to do, starting with the first one, so that your first take is .01, your second take is .02, your third take is .03. Or if you forget to do that, then you create a new playlist that you name .main or something along those lines, and then you leave all of your takes intact, and then you comp up to a blank take. I typically don't do that. I just record, starting with that first take, and then just go on after that, and then I comp onto my first take using that first take as a starting point. So, I mean, different people have different workflows. That's what works for me. Sometimes I do it the way I'm taught because it's what I was taught. But most of the time, that's what I do, and it works, right? And so I comp that, so I'll delete that blank space, and I just kind of edit while I'm comping.
Searching, seek and destroy. Searching, seek and destroy. Searching, seek and destroy.
So the timing's a little off on all of those, but I think pitch-wise, that third take matched up the best. So I comp that up and delete that little extra space, fade in, fade out, and move on to the next one. So I'm almost done with this. I've got to finish this last line of the chorus. We'll go ahead and do that.
Searching, seek and destroy. Searching, seek and destroy.
So the timing and pitch was pretty good on that one.
Searching, seek and destroy.
Yeah, I think the second one's going to work best for that one. Fade out. And there's some places like this little bit of silence that you could delete or make the recording a little cleaner, or you can leave it in to help the phrase feel more intact.
Searching, seek and destroy.
There's just a little bit of silence we can cut out there. Just want to be careful not to cut out too much. All right. And so that's the vocal comping process. I'm going to finish comping this last little bit, and then I'm going to move on to recording the aggressive stuff, the growls and screams. At this point, I usually record 2 layers of that as well. It really helps to fill out those aggressive sounds. And I'm debating on whether or not I'm going to do some clean vocals, kind of soft panned during the choruses. I may or may not. I'm not sure yet. We'll see once I get those aggressive stuff down how I feel. But let me do this comping process, record some aggressive vocals, and we'll be back. Okay, just another little interjection here. So I've got my 2 layers of lead vocal recorded and comped, and I just did a couple layers of growls. Now with my aggressive vocals, I typically don't need to do too many takes of those, because they're pitched, but they're not that pitch dependent, I guess. I'm not sure how to describe that. So this gives me an example to show something that's just kind of a fast thing you can do when you're in the editing process. So if you've got takes that are really clean like this, I mean, you can see we've got very little noise and our signal is nice and clear. So then you can do strip silence. So I just select all of that, and right now I'm doing just that one layer, but if I wanted to, I could expand this down to both layers and go to edit and strip silence, or hit the shortcut Control U, and it's going to load it with whatever the previous settings were. But basically you can kind of zoom in, and that little box is what it will allow. So you got your threshold, right? So if I move that up, now it's not picking up anything, identifying anything. I move it down, move it down, move it down until I get just the blocks that I want, and I scroll left and right to check that. All right, and then we can set I typically don't mess with min strip duration, but my clip start pad, so I can add, so if I have it down to 0 milliseconds, it starts exactly where the signal gets above that threshold, which is going to really cut things short and we're going to require a lot more manual editing. So I want to make sure I add a decent pad to the beginning of that to allow each section of audio to really start clearly. Right, and then I'm going to scroll through, and then, same thing with the end pad, okay? If I have it all the way down to 0, then we're going to be cutting off the tails of a lot of this audio. If we move it too far, then we're not actually cutting out all the silence we want. So we want to just bring that in exactly where it's going to cut everything exactly how we want it. And we always want to scroll through and make sure that we can see that it's doing exactly what we want it to, right? And then we can just say strip. Hey, look, it did all the editing for us. While we've got everything connected, we could do, let's see, was that? The shortcut is Control F for the batch fades. So, you can say how fast you want your fade in to be, how fast you want your fade out to be. Let's do 25 milliseconds, crossfade 100, fade out 150. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. We need more fades. So let's do 100, 250, and we'll say 150. Or we'll do 170, 175, right? And then say OK. All right, and then you can see our fades are all put in place, and we can just adjust those as we see fit, right? And I can look through and let's see, there was something up here. Right here, so where one layer comes in after the other. So then I just adjust those fades, and then there's some places where it didn't, cut out as much silence as I would like, and it's easily adjusted manually, right? So it just saves a little bit of work. You still have to go in and clean up, usually, and again, this only works on super clean audio. If you're recording a drum kit, you'd have a hard time with this, and you'd probably have to go track by track, but there's usually so much bleed on an acoustic drum kit that that is fairly useless. And same thing with electric guitar, especially heavily distorted electric guitar. It's you can base it off of a DI track and get away with it. And we're back. I have finished tracking aggressive vocals, which you can hear from the sound of my now suddenly very, very deep voice. Yeah, the growls I do okay with when I go into the screams. Like there are ways I can tame it down to do it live that it doesn't completely decimate my vocal cords, but it doesn't sound as good. So for recording, I push really hard, and it's not the healthiest way to do it. And I know that there are better ways of actually making it happen. But anyway, I've got everything tracked, recorded. I still might do the clean harmonies in the choruses, but my voice can't do it today. So I'm just going to work on this, but I thought I'd show kind of the rest of this editing process after I've done the strip silence thing. And I typically record more vocals than I know that I will need. You know, it's something that I didn't understand as a younger musician, that a lot of times the absence of something is what gives something impact when it is present. So, you know, a lot of times, especially if you're playing live in a band, like you just want to be going full throttle all the time because it feels good and it's fun, but it can take away from the impact and the overall like actual quality of the song. So like on the chorus, and let's back up to a pre-chorus, or let's back up to pre-chorus. So you can see that I've muted out, so where it's gray is where I've muted. So I'll show you how I do that up here. So I know that I want the searching to sound on my growls and screams, but then I want the seek and destroy to just be the lead vocal. So I'm just going to kind of adjust my fades here a little bit, get that a little tighter, and then I'm going to cut this all out, delete, and then put some fades there. And I'll go ahead and put fades in this, even though I'm going to mute it. Mute it. Just in case I decide to unmute it later, that's already done. So I just hit Control M and it grays it out and mutes it.
Seek and destroy.
Right? On places where there's an audible portion next to an inaudible portion, I do the same thing. You know, I separate each clip, and because I've got these things grouped with the growls 1 grouped and growls 2 grouped, I'm editing pairs of tracks at a time. And then I'll go ahead and mute it, but then I do a crossfade. Again, this is just in case I decide to unmute it later, then I don't have to worry about the edit, right? Because if I muted it and did a fade out, and then I decided to unmute that later, well, now there's potential clipping, there's potential like weird audio artifacts that can happen. So if I go ahead and edit this like I'm going to keep it, then later on I can just mute, unmute as I want, and make it sound how I want. So if we back up to the pre-chorus, we get something like,
Take it, but now go get it. Run it. On my way high. You will pay dying 1,000 deaths. Run it. On my way high. You will pay dying 1,000 deaths.
so, and I'm doing hard panning. I've got my growls on the left, my screams on the right. Yeah. So that's just a little thing that I wanted to show, and I'm going to go through the rest of this and just kind of selectively mute and unmute things and use that to kind of compose my aggressive backing vocals. It's kind of almost like a part writing tool where I can record, if I wanted to, I could just record the whole, you know, growling and screaming along with the whole daggum thing, and then come back later and go, okay, well, now that part doesn't work, that part does. Okay, well, I think, okay, it should come in on this syllable here and cut off on this syllable here, and I can really construct the various parts. Now, it is harder on the voice. It'd be easier on me if, you know, if I just knew what I wanted to be there exactly. And usually I've got like a pretty good idea. but I would rather have it and be able to just edit things in and out than to be trying to produce something and later come back and go, well, man, I really wish it had X, Y, or Z, and then have to re-record. So rather have it than not need it, than need it and not have it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and finish all the rest of this editing and muting and unmuting. And then on another day after my voice has recorded, I guess probably next weekend, I will come back and record those clean harmony vocals and see how that fits. I really just think in the chorus, I want it to be with the searching and do something like that. Forgive my pitch, it's horrible right now. And if I'm doing that, then I might switch these up, which is again why it's good to have and not need the need and not have, right? So if I've got clean vocals going through that, I could have them all, like all the vocals just searching, and then drop down to just the lead vocal for the Seek and Destroy, and that might be cool. Or if I like the harmony vocals, it might be cool to have, searching, lead vocal and the harmony vocal going, and then maybe I cut the lead vocal out completely and just have the aggressive vocals doing Seek and Destroy. That might be cool too. So there's a few things that I'm thinking arrangement-wise to have the vocals doing interesting in and out things, but it's going to take me a while to compose it, and I need all the parts in place. So that's what's going to happen next, and we will reconvene, cut the clip and come back once I've got all that done, and we can see exactly what I decided to do. All right, and we're back. So now let's switch over to my session and see what we've got going on in here now that everything's tracked and edited and comped. What I ended up with, I'll just start with the top here. I did 2 layers of lead vocal. And I believe we've already talked about the comping process, but I'll kind of revisit what ended up happening here. So I did a few takes, and then like on the lead part, I kind of felt like my pitch was too low and didn't have enough energy at the first part, and that I didn't quite nail the pitch on that second part. So I ended up coming back and doing a couple more takes and comping those in. And what we've got on, and I did the same thing that I've done with the guitars, is that I grouped the ML1 and the WA87. I put those into a track group so I can edit and solo and mute and all that stuff at once. So what we've got here is
Scanning the scene in the city tonight, looking for you to start up a fight.
okay. So that's what we get on our
JN, Seek and Destroy.
on our first layer of lead vocal. And then I've got a second layer that I put in here.
Searching, Seek and Destroy.
That is mixed a little bit lower. Let's see, let me go over to it over here. And you'll see, like on the lead vocal, I haven't really done anything to those in the box. Their relative levels are set the same. The ML1 on the first lead vocal track, I've got with a 251 model going into an 1176 and an LA2A model. But I'm not really even driving it very hard. So I haven't done much at all mixing wise with the lead vocal. They're just kind of there. But if we put those together,
Searching, Seek and Destroy.
okay, and so once I get those really dialed in and I kind of take that second layer and bring it down,
Searching, run, seek, and destroy.
And it's just enough to kind of add a little bit of interest. Now, I've already done some work making stems. You can see on my growls and my screams. Let me just go ahead and make these active right now. Yeah, and we already believe in a previous, back in time section, I talked about the whole editing process of this and trying to decide what I wanted to have muted and unmuted. And what I ended up deciding to do is I've got a harmony vocal, which we'll get to here in a minute, that I haven't stemmed out yet. That's basically doing the searching thing. And then the aggressive vocals come in with the seek and destroy. It sounds a little bit wonky pre-mixed, but I've got a vision for what that's going to sound like once I get things more mixed in and balanced. But you can hear what we've got going on our aggressive sounds. So here's the ML1.
Take any more. Take any more.
Okay, and here's the 87.
Take any more.
Now, plugin wise, so I've got the two different layers going. I've kind of got them blended and mixed in. Sorry, I'm covering my mouth. Sorry if that was a little muffled. So on the ML1, I'm using a SM7B model going into an 1176 with a SSL EQ that really is just doing a little bit of high passing. I also have a de-esser on here doing high frequency only, and then the revival just adding some shimmer and thickness. Basically just high and low shelf filters that are designed to add a little bit of harmonic saturation and bring up the low end and the high end in a pleasing way. So that's what I'm doing there. And then on the second layer, I've got, which I'm using the 87 going into the 1273 with the 369 as an insert point, as my more saturated layer. And so I've got the SSL Fusion Transformer and the SSL X Saturator. And then I've got Virtual Mix Rack, which I'm saying that's going into like a British style. You know what? Let's switch that to a Neve style. I've also got that high pass slightly more aggressively than I do the first layer and a de-esser on there. So if we hear those together.
Take any more.
Right? And then we also have a second layer of that. So basically the same thing.
Take any more.
So you can hear, like, if we just add those little by little.
Take any more. Take any more. Take any more. Take any more.
It just gets thicker and more aggressive. And then I've got similar things set up on the screams, which I've got going on the other side. Let's see. And for the most part throughout the song, I've got those going at the same time. So let's just listen to the screams right now.
Check anyone. Check it.
I don't know how that got solo saved. There we go.
Check anyone. Check anyone. Check anyone. Check anyone.
Which sounds a little, yeah, but in the mix of things.
Check anymore.
Right? And if we listen to that in the context of the whole mix.
Won't take anymore.
Right? Pretty cool. So that's going to work out okay. Now to save on CPU processing power, because I've got all these plugins and all that, I put a send that's got those going to a stem track here and a stem track there. And so I'm actually going to hide and make inactive all those because I've got my stems. So if we listen to the growl stem,
take any more.
and the scream stem.
Check anymore. Check anymore. Won't take anymore.
So that's a little... Couldn't really even hear that.
Won't take anymore. Won't take anymore.
There we go.
Won't take anymore.
So that's what's going on there, and I'll probably put another virtual mix rack on there, and you know, do some, maybe a little bit more saturation, a little bit more compression, another round of de-essing, you know, a little bit more EQing. Just once I get to the mix phase, that'll get a little bit more dialed in. And so then the next round of stuff, and you can see, is I've got 3 layers on each side of harmony vocals. And all those are really doing is...
Seek and destroy.
Okay, so my first layer is just my normal kind of regular comfortable pitch. The second layer is my deep one. All right, and then the third layer is me trying to go all nasal and kind of give it a different tone. And if we put all those together, all right, and actually, you know what, let's... All right, and if we do that on both sides... So we get something kind of cool there. And again, it's not mixed right now, it's just raw parts that I finished recording. And I'm going to put those into stereo stems. So I'm going to do layer 1 stem, which is, you know, regular pitch, layer 2 stem, which is the deep pitch, and layer 3 stem, which is the nasally pitch, or nasally tone. But I still need to do some stuff to them. So you can see I'm putting some metatune on this vocal right now. See, but that's creating some weird phasing things that I'm not liking. But yeah. Oh, and here's an interesting thing. Here's a very interesting thing that we can look at while I'm in here. Okay. So what do I have on here? All right, let me disable that. Okay. So this second layer, let's disable the metatune for right now too. Let's just look at the virtual mix rack. So my second layer here is my Warm Audio WA87, modeling the Neumann U87. And then my other mic is a Slate ML1, a modeling mic. So I was playing around with this and went, okay, what happens if, you know, and I've got that WA87 going into my Behringer 1273. So I just kind of had a thought, no, what if we just kind of mimicked the Warm Audio setup, or Warm Audio / Behringer setup with the Slate stuff, and see what kind of difference we have. Now the WA87, I do have, in that signal chain, I do have my Behringer 369 KT turned on in the insert to do a little bit of compression. and I don't think we have a 369 style compressor in the slate modeling stuff, but there's an LA2A, so we can kind of compare with that. So, all right, let's listen to the WA87 through the 369, or through the 1273. Okay. Now let's listen to the ML1 modeling a similar signal chain. So I think the WA87 at this point has a little bit more high end. If we start turning all this stuff on, and if we turn on the VMR and also add an LA2A into that, they sound a little bit different. I think the ML1 seems a little bit warmer, but it's interesting. They both sound good. Okay, so I'm going to disable that. That one was just kind of a trial thing that I was messing with. So on this other one, I'm using a Sony C800 model, which similar setup, right? So I like the virtual channels Neve console emulation. I tend to gravitate towards the SSL compressor, or not compressor, the SSL EQ. I like the layout. I just really like how that works. And I like that it's fully parametric. And then the FGDS, the de-esser, works pretty good. And then my LA2A model. And that does what I want it to. So. Alright, and so then I can kind of decide which layer I want to be the primary layer. Sometimes it makes a big difference, sometimes it doesn't. I think I like the ML1 as my primary layer. And so then the question becomes to tune or not to tune. So I noticed when I turned Metatune on, it does affect the tone a little bit. Now, I could boost the high end to kind of compensate for that. Maybe I come over to my main layer. I'm already doing that a little bit. Kick that up. But my pitch isn't that bad on that one. Mainly in the vibrato. So I don't know that I necessarily even need Metatune there. But let's look at the next one. That's where I might need a little bit of help. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And just copy these plugins over.
Searching. Searching.
I think my nasal pitch one's going to be the one that's problematic.
Searching.
Okay, so what if I put some metatune just on that one? I mean, I could use Melodyne and really, I'm going to do natural tuning and just do some light tuning, right? I don't need it super dead on.
Searching. Searching. Searching.
Okay, well, if I take the...
Searching. Searching.
Do it on this one too. Take out the C sharp.
Searching.
Okay, that's better.
Searching.
So I think there's going to be some tonal issues with using the metatune on there. But so long as I'm not using it on every track, and I'm only using it where it's needed, we should be okay. And what if I do the same thing over here? Metatune, metatune.
Searching. Searching.
There, that works. Okay. And I could do a lot of like really detailed work and kind of go, okay, so want to emphasize this layer here, this layer here. I could even start putting like some saturation on a second layer. And if when we're talking about the lead vocal, I will do that, even though we're kind of starting to get more into mixing territory now. But these are the harmony vocals, right? They're not gonna be that prominent. And if I try and add too much saturation and stuff like that to them, it's just gonna end up making things really complicated. So or not really complicated, but could start adding a little bit too much. I think they're getting enough saturation with the preamp models, even though I don't really have those driven much at all. But I'm just going to kind of use that first layer as the primary for all of them because I want those harmony vocals to be mostly clean and pristine, with just that little hint of the analog stuff coming through.
Searching.
Okay. Now if we listen to that in context of everything else that's going on.
Searching. Seek and destroy. Searching. Seek and destroy. Searching. Seek and destroy. Searching. Seek and destroy.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. The last chorus you might notice is I did something a little different. So whereas the other choruses, it's clean vocals for the search in and then aggressive vocals for the seek and destroy. For the last chorus, I decided to make it a little bit different, make everything have a little bit more energy, and for it to stand out a little bit by having all the aggressive vocals and the clean vocals going at the same time, except for the clean vocals don't say seek and destroy until that very last part with the laugh. So
Searching, seek and destroy. Searching, seek and destroy.
right, and then we get to the very last one.
Searching, seek and destroy.
And when I performed that, I tried to make it as discordant and not matching up as possible. to give it that kind of chaotic crowd of laughter kind of feel, which I think worked rather well. So that's about where I'm at, and we've got vocals ready. Everything's recorded, all of our instruments down, all of our vocals are down, everything's edited and comped. Now it's getting time to mix, and we will be good to go. But thanks for watching, hanging around with me today. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. But thanks a lot. Appreciate you. You're awesome. Have a good one.